Hello, my name's Dave and I've been wood turning since the 1st of November. I first started wood turning because my dad's mate was selling off all his tools, and he had this little CD 300 swing lathe which he was selling for 50 quid, so I thought, well, I'll buy that. 50 quid, can't really go wrong. So I set it up in my workshop here and in my shed and started sort of turning. Used the tools that he had, didn't really sharpen them at all for a couple of weeks or so because I didn't know what I was doing, and just various reasons really. I didn't have a sharpening system, and then slowly since 1st November I've been buying tools and sort of add-ons and bits and pieces. I've been in contact on this wood turning forum with a guy called Rob, who very generously sold me his CL4 lathe, which is a variable speed. Does up to 30-inch bowls, and that's the headstock sort of slides, the motor slides up and down the rails and the bed. So it's a very flexible sort of professional type system. I got this a few months ago, and it's still got warranty until next November. Now, the purpose of this video is just basically to say hello and to explain what I've got, which is, as I say, the CL4, and I'll show you that in a minute. It's a lovely machine. I bought some basic tools. I'm not an expert, as I say, so anything you do see in these videos, you do it. If you do it yourself, you do it at your own risk. I do it at my risk. I try to be as safe as possible. I try and use face masks and face shields and that sort of thing. Try and keep myself safe, and also I do try and take very light cuts, because there's no point in just shoving the tool in and hoping for the best. So it's best to take light cuts, and then you should be safe then. Okay, so this is my little work area of my shed. So I've got my chisels lined up on the lathe there. I've also got some tools up on a wall, and a clock at head height so I don't get confused what time it is. So I know to actually go in and go to sleep instead of staying out here all night having fun. So this is the variable speed lathe. Beautiful machine it is. Really, really lovely. And I love these cam locks as well. Makes one-handed movement very, very easy. Same with this. You just move them along, lock them off. Okay, like that. This is my lathe. I've got it set, so I've got 5 belt positions there. I have it set on the middle one, and what that means is, if you go to the middle speed, the slowest speed, I don't know if you can see that, 27 revolutions per minute. The fastest, 2,150. So basically, when you're rounding off, you have it on number 2, that does it about 400, and then you can obviously go up faster. So this is the headstock, this is the motor, that's all the electrical stuff going on in there. This actually swings around 90 degrees with an additional part that goes on there, fixes underneath there. You can then turn up to 30-inch bowls because obviously it's spinning around here, that type of thing. But it's a lovely machine. It's very, very solid bars, very quiet, basically lovely machine. Okay, so where do you start as a total beginner? Now obviously, as I say, I'm not an expert, I am a beginner myself, but there are some very basic things that you need to pick up very quickly in order to have any sort of progression at all. So let's use this little piece under here, which fits nicely, just a little bit of wood, very handy tool holder as well, just fits over the top bars, like that. That gives us a nice sort of firm platform to work on. The lathe is actually switched off at the plug, so there's no danger of this coming on or anything. And what we want to do is, obviously we want to turn a bit of wood. So to put it between centres, which is what the chuck and the pointy bit at the other end, the tailstock, we need to put it between there. But in order to turn that, we need to find the centre. So what we do is we have our piece of wood. Now this one's pretty much square, so I can use this one, that's fine. What I haven't got though is a pencil. One moment. Okay, so I've got my pencil. Okay, so this thing is well worth buying. If you just started up wood turning, this is awesome. It's a centre finder, it's plastic, it's about £3. There's loads of places you can buy it from, auction sites or turning sites. Really, really good for square and not square, so round as well. But it's brilliant. It's called a centre finder, and it's almost square, but it'll do for me. So on this one you've got like a right angle there, so you put the right angle over the corner, you draw a line, and you do the same for every single corner. So you turn it, you draw a line, you turn it, you draw a line, whoops, you draw a line, you turn it, and you draw a line. Now in this mishmash of lines, this crisscross, you can find a centre. So the centre is going to be the centre of these two lines and the centre of these two lines, so it's going to be about there. Okay, now what I do is I've sharpened a nail just to use as a point, just make a little point in there. So there we go. So that is where the tailstock point, the rotating point goes, or the drive end goes. Okay, but that just goes in there. We do the same to the other end. So draw a line, turn it, draw a line, turn it, draw a line, turn it, turn it, draw a line. Okay, so these two lines a little bit closer, okay, and these two lines. So we just get that, and we find the middle of that, and we go, let me push that in. Okay. So now we've got our centres. So now we can actually do something with that. Let's put this back, excuse me. Okay, so we've got our centre that end, and we've got our centre that end. Okay, so now we're ready to put it between centres. Now, excuse me, this end, it's got lots of sort of cracks and shakes and things in it, so I'm not going to, for what I want to do, I'm not going to use this end, but what I want to do is I'd like to fit it in my chuck. So what I've got to do is on this end I've got to make like a little tenon sticking out, so I've got to round this corner off in there and just have about, I think it's about a 5mm tenon sticking out, which will fit in there. Now with these jaws, when you actually tighten up the tenon, what you don't want to do is just move you around. Right, what you don't want is when the tenon's in, is for these to actually be touching, right? So when you've got the tenon in there and it's these are tight, if you tightened it up, you should have about an 1/8 of an inch or about 4mm gap there when tightened. Okay, not before you tighten, when you tighten. You can have it, the tenon larger, but the reason you have it tightened with a little gap there is because this bit here is only round, the inside is only actually properly round at that measurement. Now most jaws come with instructions with the internal measurement and the external measurement, because as well as having a tenon that these can close onto, they can also expand into a mortise, which you would cut in the bottom, so you cut like a little divot in there sort of thing. Okay, so that's basically what we want to do. Now the good thing about these is that I can use my 4-prong. See that? It's got 4 prongs on it and a point. I can use that in there, and what I can do is I can actually tighten it up, so I don't have to take this off at all. Okay, so I can literally just go like that. That's a little point. Oops, that's a little point I made earlier. Little hole. So you see that will go on there nicely. Okay, so that is our centre. Now I'm just going to switch you off while I get the other end sorted out, and I'll put it on there, and then we put the tenon on that end. Okay, so I've brought the towel stock up. What I've done is I've left it, I've wound it back so the revolving head goes as far into this as possible until it stops moving, and I've moved it up, and I've left probably about 3/4 of an inch, half an inch, 3/4 of an inch between the end of the rotating centre and the block of wood, and that means that I can actually take it out. See, I can actually take it out like that, and I can put it back in again if I want to, which obviously I do. So let's get that back in there. As I say, I'm not an expert, so excuse me. So then you can see you've got the hole there, and then you just tighten that up like that. Okay, this is all locked down. That's loose. That's locked down. That's going in there. Okey-dokey. So you just make sure it's tight on the drive end. It's tight on there, and then you lock it off. Okay. Now, very important. I'm just going to do my top up. Very important. There's a few things that you really need to do. Okay. So loose clothing. Right, you need to make sure everything's like your sleeves are rolled up, or you've got like if you're going to wear long sleeves, have ones with like Velcro round so it tightens them and it keeps them. Because what you don't want to do is have a bit of loose clothing like that goes in there, and then imagine that's turning at however many. Say you're roughing it out 400 times a minute. That's going round. That goes round. It will literally take a second to take your fingers or wrist off or whatever. That gets caught in there. That's really nasty. Okay. And the second thing you want to do before you, well, there's three actually. So you want to make sure everything is locked down solid. Okay. So locked down. If you've got a chuck with more than one hole on here, you want to tighten them all up. Okay. So that's my tip. Okay. So that's locked down, that's locked down, that's locked down there. Right. Now, from what I've learnt in my limited time of turning, there's a lot of controversy over tool rest height. This is your tool rest, this is where your tools slide along. Okay, so when you're rounding off, you have it a little bit closer than that, but basically you have your tool rest there, right, and you're moving a tool very tiny amount, especially on these corners, because if you push it in too fast you'll go like that and everything will lock up, and that's called a catch. Okay, you don't want catches. Catches ruin work. Okay, and can be very dangerous as well. So what you're doing is, with rounding off, you want to just take a very small cuts, but you want to make sure, I mean what I do is, let me just turn that around a bit. Right, so I hold the end of the chisel like that, and I hold it to my hip. Okay, that means it's not going anywhere. As well, when I'm rounding off, what I do is put my hand over here. You notice that I haven't got any jewellery or anything, right? It's nothing that can catch or whatever. So what I do is you're gently taking off a little bit at a time. Okay, so this corner, obviously the more you take off, the less it will be, and it will be, you have like a larger cutting area, because at the moment your cutting area is that corner there, so your tool contact is about what, 1/2 millimetre, something like that, 1/4 millimetre. And as you, obviously as you take wood off, that cutting area gets bigger and more comes off, so it's a lot safer as well, because it's supported by the other wood. Okay, so tool rest height. What you want is, I keep mine, as I say, there. That's comfortable for me. That's how I do it. Some people say you must have, or you might read that they say that you must have the tool rest at exactly the middle of these points. So that point there and that point there, exactly halfway, right? Now that's not always true. because if you're a short person, right, you're going to be down here, or shorter than me, sorry, not a short person, sorry if that offends anybody. So your angle of the chisel is going to be different. Okay, you see, so it makes it a bit different there. Okay, so what I've learned is that you have to make sure that the cutting edge is on the centre, okay, or slightly above the centre. So you're cutting. So what I do is I put that there, and I sort of gauge it. Okay, so that is pretty much, that's just slightly above centre. That is for me, and I'm also making sure that this tool rest, when you look over it and down, is in line with the bars. You don't have to, but it's easier if you're a beginner, because then you've got some idea of how straight you're cutting. Okay, so there we go. Right, now this is the end I'm going to be working on. This is the end I want, so I'm actually going to cut this off about there. I'll do that in a minute, but I want to put a more I want to put a tenon on this end, okay? But what I might do is I'll just turn it down first, I think. Will I? No, I won't, because it's cracked all around there. So what I'll do is I'll just put the tenon on. Yeah, I'll round this off, and then I'll put the tenon on there, okay? So what I'll do is I'm going to switch it on to about 400. Now before you actually turn the lathe on, you lock everything down. So you lock that down, that's locked down. You lock that down or up, you lock it, and then you spin this by hand. And what you're doing here is you're making sure that you've got clearance between the tool rest and your bit of wood. So you're spinning like that, and okay, you know, I've got about 1/4 of an inch, 5/16, something like that. So about 7-8 mil, something like that. Anyway, so that will spin nicely once it's turned on. Now, what you do have to do, if you're working between centres and you do get a catch, it will wobble. So what you'll have to do is at some stage is unlock this bit, to do like a half a turn or a 1/4 turn, just to make sure that it doesn't rock, because you can feel it rocking. Just do a half a turn or something, and then lock it back up. Just make sure you lock everything up. Everything's got to be totally stable, okay? Don't take chances, it's really not worth it. I'm not going to lose a finger over this, just for a bit of wood. So yeah, so you've got to be really careful. Okay, so I'm just going to move you into a better place, and we get going.